Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm showing you every step to replace your cylinder head gasket on your Td5 Land Rover Defender or Discovery. I've also got a video series on how to change your cylinder head on the Td5, so check the links below in the description where I've got the removal video, the preparation video and the installment video. I've taken a few bits of these videos to make this cylinder head gasket video, so this will show you exactly step by step, every step from beginning to end, how to replace your cylinder head gasket. So and I'm following the Haynes manual for all the steps, so if you have one, that will really help together with this video. So I wish you good luck with your projects, and thank you for watching. Okay, so we'll start with reading the instructions. And as you can see here, cylinder head removal, inspection and refitting. Disconnect the battery negative lead. Yes, we've done that. Undo the fasteners to remove the engine undershield. If you still have that on, just take it off. I've done it on mine. Drain the cooling system. So that's something we'll need to do. Then it says remove the cylinder head cover as described. So start by removing the bonnet so you get some extra space. Then remove the fan itself. I use the special tools for the Td5, but you can use a 32mm spanner as well. The rocker cover is held on with 8mm bolts. Loosen those and just lift it off and remove the gasket. And then loosen the rocker tensioners as described in the Haynes manual as well. The camshaft, loosen that slowly, and then the injector bolts. We'll do number 3, drain the cooling system, as described in chapter 1. Let's get ourselves a proper container, that one, and get under it and remove the coolant drain plug. And don't forget to open the expansion tank. Take the cap off. Okay, and while the coolant system is draining, we can remove some intake pipes. We want to remove this intake pipe. It goes from the air filter and goes around to the turbocharger. So we're going to remove a plug that is right under here. That goes to the mass airflow sensor. And then we can open these clips right here. And then there is one hose clamp on the turbocharger. And we'll just use a flat blade screwdriver and undo that clamp. There we go. And then we can pull this whole thing off. And that frees up a lot of space around the intake manifold and makes it easier to lift the whole head off as well. Next we'll have to do the turbo. So we'll undo the banjo bolt, that's the banjo fitting, that's there in the middle. And that's just one bolt. And then there is a pipe connected to it, and that has 2 washers on each side. Those washers should always be replaced when you take this off. And then we'll also do the 3 bolts that connect the turbocharger to the exhaust manifold. And this banjo bolt is a 14mm, and it is a oil pipe, so it goes from the engine block up to the turbo. Make sure that the turbo gets enough lubrication. Take that out and take good care of it. There are 2 washers and they should be replaced. Okay, and now we'll do the bolts on the turbocharger. And there are 3. 1 isn't visible and 2 are up top. And these usually are 13mm nuts. And they can be really tight. And sometimes a ratchet spanner won't fit in between them. So then you'll just have to use a normal one. Okay, and now that the turbocharger nuts are loose, you can actually move the turbocharger around. So we'll do that. We'll have to order a new exhaust manifold gasket to the turbo. But now the exhaust manifold is loose from the turbo, and the exhaust manifold can actually lift off with the head. And that makes for easier removal of the exhaust manifold when the head is off, and you can actually easily reach all the bolts. Okay, so now that the turbo is loose and the coolant has been drained and we've taken the air pipe off, we can now start to disconnect the plugs and also take the bolts off for the wires that connect to the head, because we want to take all the plugs off. And same goes for the glow plug wires that are inside of there, as well as the fuel temperature sensor and a few more wires. So just make sure you know where all these wires go. That's going to be the next step. And I always put the bolts back where I took them out as soon as I have the opportunity for it. In this case, I'll just put them back. Okay, and then we'll start unplugging some stuff and get the wires out of the way. And just get the wires out of the way. I'm lifting the head off with the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold still fitted. So I just have to make sure that the wires, cables are not going in between the intake manifold and the head. And now it's a question of taking the glow plug wires off. A long nose plier with a bent nose basically. Brought this to the ignition coil wires on the Rover V8. Yep, and they work. And they also have to be pushed out of the way. That's the glow plug wires removed, and now I'm going to do the fuel temperature sensor on the fuel pressure regulator. Yes, and then we also have the MAP sensor. I think it's called mass absolute pressure, and that actually reads the pressure in the intake manifold. You just have to disconnect a plug. You can leave the sensor. Okay, after you've removed all the wiring, it actually tells you to disconnect the EGR valve and vacuum lines and stuff. But on mine, the EGR valve is already, I've put it in the trash. So I have a blank EGR and the vacuum lines are plugged and they are back here. I've just routed them so they're not in the way of anything and plugged them. If you have an EGR valve on yours, then you should remove the vacuum lines. There are 1 or 2 vacuum lines on there, and that's basically it. And after you've either disconnected the EGR valve vacuum lines or just not done anything like I've done, then we'll loosen up this hose clamp and take the air pipe off. There we go. Here's the intake manifold, and down here we have a fuel cooler. So there is actually diesel fuel going into here via some fuel lines, and there's coolant going into here. And the coolant then lowers the temperature of the diesel. We now have to disconnect the coolant lines, and after that we can disconnect the fuel lines. There we go, the front one off. And this is the fuel line that goes from the fuel tank to this cooler. Okay, so now we've taken off the fuel lines and covered them up. Now we can take off the coolant pipe. It's at the back. Yes, and the lower one is filled with coolant, so make sure you put the container underneath. There we go. Now that's all the fuel lines and coolant lines taken off of the fuel cooler. Now we can move up front. Okay, now we're at the front of the engine, and we are supposed to take the vacuum line bolt out. So we're going to do that. And after that, we're going to the EGR cooler. And that's a 14 millimeter. And then we'll pull it out, wiggle it back and forth. And there's a rubber seal on here, and that should be replaced too. And then when we're here, we are going to take off the alternator bracket bolt, the top and bottom. And you're supposed to take the bottom one, loosen that one, so you can actually move the bracket, and take this one out completely. There we go, that's loose, because it is fitted to the head, and we have to take off everything that's connected to the head that stays in the engine bay when we lift the head off. Okay, so that's off, and because I've loosened it down there, you can actually move it around. Okay, so now there's a bit of a difference. Some engines have the EGR cooler and some don't. My earlier Td5, the Defender 130, didn't have one. One of my Discovery 2's Td5 had it, and two of them didn't. So that's a bit different depending on what car you have. But I'll show you if you have one, and if you don't, then you don't have to worry about this. So you have to disconnect this coolant hose here and the coolant hose down there, and then we'll disconnect the EGR pipes as well. On mine it's blanked here. If you still have your EGR valve here, then there will be a pipe just like this on this side too, connecting there. So take those off, take the coolant lines off, and then you should be able to take the cooler itself off the head. Okay, so now we've taken these two bolts off. Okay, now we'll take the cooler off, and it's just a 10 millimeter bolt here, and then it's supposed to be a 10 millimeter bolt on the bottom. We'll see. Let's see if we can. And there's supposed to be a third one. So again, to show you the position of all the bolts, there's a bolt up top, and it's a 10 mil. And then we have one bolt in the corner, it's also 10 mil. And then we have one stud, and there's a nut on there, and that's a 13 millimeter. And now we can actually take this little thing off. And we're slowly making our way around the engine. And now we're just going to take off some coolant pipes, and I'm going to take off this big hose mounted with a clamp there, and then this pipe actually goes to the back and is mounted to the head with two 10 millimeter bolts. So we'll take that off, and we don't have to disconnect this pipe from anywhere. There we go. Now that's quite loose. And now we can put the bolts back in again. Here you can actually see some pink and yellow gross stuff, and that indicates that there's been some coolant leaking here. So you get that when you have a coolant leak. Okay, now that we've taken the top heater hose off, we are going to take these two bolts out, and there's a nut on one and there's a bolt in the other, and this secures the cylinder head to the block. So we'll take those two out. Okay, so now that we've taken off all the accessories all the things that stay in the engine bay when we lift the head off. Now it's time to actually lock the timing in place. So the Haynes manual describes this very well. It also shows you that if you don't have any special tools, you can make your own. So I've actually done that, and they're saying that you should get two drill bits, a hydraulic flange, basically a coupling. It shows you very clearly in the book. There you can see one of the illustrations, but you need a 6.5 millimeter drill and an 8 millimeter drill bit, and then a pneumatic coupling. So I've just taken this off one of the accessories for my compressor. Had some extra. I cut off the quick connection so that the 8 millimeter drill fits through perfectly. That's all you need. So now we are going to use a spanner. It's a 24 millimeter ratchet I'm using. We put this on the crankshaft pulley, so the lowest point of the engine, and that way we can turn the engine around. And we have to turn it until we get to top dead center of cylinder number 1. So it also shows in the book how to do that. So if you have a Haynes manual, it's really helpful. But I'll show you myself, and then you won't have to read this book. So here we have the timing chain, and some of it is exposed when you take off the rocker cover. And what we are looking for are 2 colored chain links, and these should be matched with, on this wheel we can see a groove, not right now, but we are going to spin the engine just like this until we find a groove in the cog wheel, and then we also have to find the 2 colored links and match them together. So as you can see here, marked yellow, there is actually a groove in this wheel, and we need this groove to be up top here together with 2 colored links. So we are going to turn the engine until both the colored links appear together with the groove. And there you can see it. Now we finally got the groove and the 2 colored links together in the same spot. There you can see them all together, the bronze colored links together with the groove in the wheel. And that way we can now take our special tool, a 6.5 millimeter drill bit, and we can put it in the hole that is behind the chain, just like that. And it's supposed to go in there and slot into a groove. So we'll just have to turn it a little and make it fit. When you're doing this yourself, you can actually see the groove behind it, so you know exactly when you're in. And when it's in, like now, I can actually not turn the engine around at all. So that's the drill bit in place. And now we're at exactly top dead center for cylinder number 1. So with this drill bit in place and we've locked the timing, now we can go under the car and lock the flywheel in place. And we do that using our special pneumatic thread tool and this 8 millimeter drill, which we put in between. And it's just a little bolt on the flywheel housing that we screw out, and then we screw this threaded piece in, and then we can stick the drill bit in place. Okay, so here we have a view of the bell housing, and that's the bolt that we're talking about. So it's placed on the passenger side for left-hand drive vehicles. It's really easy to find, and I had to spend some time earlier to try and make it loose. So as you can see, my bolt is a bit rounded off, but I got it loose in the end. Now we're going to take it off. And in there, I don't know if you can actually see in there, but you can see some cogs from the flywheel. We are going to thread our little piece in, just like that. And the drill bit is just loose. But we're going to put that in, and then the drill. Stick it in there, and I'm going to tape this so it will stay in place. And that way the flywheel can't spin either. Okay, now with all the timing locked in place and the engine locked as well, we can now remove the timing chain tensioner and some other bolts. Okay, now the timing chain tensioner is here, and I'm going to use a big wrench to take it off. There we go. That's the timing chain tensioner. There's a little seal on here, and that should be replaced, a copper washer. Okay, and after we've taken off the timing chain tensioner, then we'll do this Allen bolt, and it's an 8mm. And make sure you get it in properly, so you don't round it off. There we go, that's that, 8mm Allen bolt. Okay, and when we've taken the timing chain tensioner and the Allen bolt out, it is time to try and take this seal off. And just be careful, the seal is going to be replaced always, but be careful not to damage the aluminium. And now it's time to take the 3 bolts that hold the camshaft to the timing chain wheel. Whoop! And these are 13mm bolts. So just take them off. They come off quite easily. And these bolts, I think, should also be replaced every time you do this job. There we go. Okay, and now this wheel is loose from the camshaft. So now we can just let it rest inside of there. Now that everything is loose and we've gotten to the point where the timing chain is loose and secure, we can actually start taking the head bolts out. So yeah, these are a special E10 socket. So it's like a reverse Torx. We're going to take them out by a reverse sequence. So here's the bolt tightening sequence for the head bolts. We are going to do this the reverse way. So we are going to start with 12, 11, 10, 9, and so on and so on. And take them off carefully and slowly. Okay, so we are going to start with number 12. And then we have number 11. So left rear corner, and then number 11 is the right rear corner. And then we have 10, it's the front right. And then 9, front left. 8 is here. 7. Okay, so now that we've removed all the head bolts, the head is actually loose from the engine block. So now I'm going to call a buddy and get some help lifting this off. I've left both the inlet and exhaust manifold on, and the head itself is quite heavy already. So I'm going to get the help from a buddy to lift it off so we don't damage anything on the head. If I try to lift this off by myself, then I might just damage the whole head and still have to buy a new one. Okay, so now that the head is loose, it is time to actually lift it off. And as you can see here on my workbench, I've prepared a soft and flat surface, nothing underneath, and it's clean so that the head can rest on it. The Haynes manual doesn't say you have to take the injectors off, but I've done that anyways because I had to diagnose them. But a good tip when you take the head off is to take the injectors off as well, because they actually stick out on the bottom of the head. So if you take the head off with the injector still in place, just remember to not put it down flat. You have to lean it to the side or something to make sure that the injector tips do not touch anything and get destroyed. Okay, and then when you finally remove the cylinder head from the engine, you actually have to think about what to order. So I'll tell you quickly about the parts you need to order, for example, which head gasket and head bolts and stuff. And then you can order those before refitting everything again. To find out which head gasket you need, you can check for the side. So on the engine it will be mounted like this, and there's a little tab sticking out from under the head. So you can actually check this with the head in place, and then you can see how many holes there are to determine the thickness of the gasket itself. And this one, my car only has one hole in it, so I know that I have to order a new head gasket with only one hole. Then we have the head bolts. These are very long and they are stretch bolts, so they can only be used once. So they actually stretch a little, and they also stretch with the engine warming up and cooling down and stuff. So those you'll really have to order new ones for. And here we have the turbo to exhaust manifold gasket. It also has to be replaced. Then we have the injector seals and the injector washers. We will also order new glow plugs. Now you don't have to replace them every time you do anything with the head, but in my case some of them were actually quite, this top part fell off and lost some parts and stuff, so I'm ordering new ones. Then we have these 3 bolts. So these 3 bolts connect the wheel to the camshaft that gets driven off the timing chain, and these should always be replaced when you take them off. Then we have the front seal, and this should also be replaced every time you take it out. And then we have obviously the rocker cover gasket, and if you have problems with oil in your ECU, then you should always order a new wiring harness, injector wiring harness. And then last but not least, the rocker shaft securing bolts. I actually ordered all the replaceable things, all the new seals, the gaskets, the new bolts and stuff, for about between 200 and 300 pounds. So if you do have to replace the head gasket on your Td5, I really recommend you do it yourself if you have any experience in working on your car. This isn't the most advanced thing to do. So yeah, and you can actually save a lot of money on this, because parts wise, you'll have to buy all these parts for about 200-300 pounds, and new oil, new coolant, and that's basically it. So So you're looking at like 300 to 400 pounds worth of stuff that you need. And then you won't pay for any labor because it's the labor that is expensive because this job takes some time. So that's basically all the parts that you need to do this job. And when doing this job, it's also a good idea to clean some stuff. That's a lot better. Okay, so now we're going to clean up the deck surface. This is the engine block, and we have to clean all the areas that the head gasket is going to seal against. So as you can see on the deck surface, you have the cylinder bores, of course, and then you have some holes for coolant and oil, and these bores need to be sealed off from the cylinder bores. So all these surfaces around the holes need to be cleaned up very well. There are always small bits of the old gasket left, so we are going to clean this up now. And for that I got a little sanding machine, and this will run on air. And then we have a little Rollock bristle disc, it's called, and it's 120 grit. And this is some sort of plastic that is soft, but it's also quite hard. And this will get all the leftovers of the head gasket, and we'll take it off without scratching the surface of the deck. And then we're gonna go over it with some Scotch-Brite, just some soft pads, and that way we can just clean up the surface after we're done with this. And something to note before going with the bristle is you should clean off the deck surface with some brake cleaner, and make sure that there's no coolant or oil at the top of any of the holes, because when you get on it with this, it is going to fly everywhere. And you also want to keep this as clean as possible, so start with a clean as possible surface. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we're going to use the Scotch-Brite pad and touch up the surface. Okay, now I'm very happy with that. As you can see, the deck is clean, and what's important here is that there are no visible or clear lines around the cylinders and around the ports for the oil and coolant. So, and that there are small marks around the edges doesn't matter, because that's not a sealing surface, because these are just the holes for the head bolts. So what's important is that the areas around the cylinder bores are getting done, as well as the oil and coolant. That's that done. And now the deck surface is ready to accept the new head gasket and then the head. I've already put the new cylinder head gasket in place together with the dowels, and here we are, two people lifting the cylinder head in place. And this always is a bit of a hassle, because there are some lines in the way and there are some pipes to move around and stuff. But just take your time and make sure to put it in place correctly. And feel that the cylinder head has landed on the dowels, which it has here. Then we put the brand new cylinder head bolts in. Only use new ones, don't reuse the old ones, and just put them in finger tight. Okay, here I had the cylinder head bolt tightening sequence in front of me and just went through it in my head. So you go from 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and it's basically a circle. So first you have to tighten the bolts to 30 Newton meters, and I used a good torque wrench, and as you can see I'm using big long movements because you get a better torque reading when you are smooth. Just like that. So just go around and do all the bolts to 30 Newton meters. So when all the bolts are torqued to 30 Newton meters, you can go and torque them to 65 Newton meters. And always make sure to follow the same head bolt tightening pattern, and it is seen in this video and also in the Haynes manual. And make sure to use long and smooth strokes, because that's how you get the best torque reading. Okay, then it's time to tighten all the bolts by 90 degrees. So I used a little marker and marked the bolts and also the cylinder head, so that I could match the points that I've marked on the bolts and the cylinder head together at 90 degrees. So I made sure to mark all the bolts and use a long extension. And you can put your torque wrench away now, because this is only by degrees. So I marked the bolt at one point, and then I made sure to match that point to the 90-degree mark that I also made. And I'll show you later on in this video what it looks like. And again, use long and smooth strokes. I moved the camshaft timing drill bit out of the way because I could get better motion with the breaker bar that way, and I was confident that the valves were in tight and stayed in place. There we go, that was 90 degrees on every bolt. And here you can see the marks. So all the marks align at 90 degrees from where we started. So now it was time to mark them yet again, because now it's time to tighten them a full 180 degrees, so a half a rotation. And I marked the bolts again. I used the same mark on the bolts, but I marked the cylinder head in the 180-degree position, and that way I knew where to stop tightening the bolts. Okay, and following the same pattern again, we tighten it 180 degrees, so half of a full rotation, as you can see there. And I just tighten them until the marks aligned with one smooth motion. And then just do that 12 times following the tightening sequence. After 4 or 5 bolts, I noticed that, oh, I can't see which mark is which, because the 90 degree and the 180 degree are opposite of each other. So then I started marking all the bolts I had done, just to make sure that I knew where I was. So it's a good tip to do. Now the last step is to tighten a further 45 degrees. So again, I marked the cylinder head at a 45 degree angle compared to where my marks were on the bolts at the moment, and did that for all the bolts. And then it was time to tighten the last step and make sure that the points aligned. And again, after each bolt I marked them, just to know that I had done that bolt. So I ended up with a few marks on each bolt, just to make sure that they all looked the same and that I knew where I was. And that's it. Harder than that, well, it isn't harder than that. So then you can continue with the timing chain bolts. There's one on each side, so there's a nut on the right side of the engine and there's a long bolt on the left side. And these are torqued down to 25 Newton meters. Next up, you make sure that the timing chain is on the camshaft carrier, and then you can put the bolts in finger tight. It's still important that the timing chain can move. The holes are slotted, so just put them in finger tight. And you want to put them in finger tight because you have to put the timing chain bolts in first, and these bolts retain the timing chain as well as tighten the timing chain. After you've done that, you can tighten these 3 camshaft sprocket bolts as well. So use some Loctite on the Allen key bolt, and this bolt holds the timing chain guide in place. And it goes in there on the bottom right. And that's tightened to 25 Newton meters as well. Next up, we have the timing chain tensioner, and you have to put a new copper gasket on, copper O-ring, and then put it in place. Now this is tightening the timing chain, and it's also torqued down, and I think it's also 25 Newton meters for this one. And then you can torque the timing chain sprocket bolts to the camshaft, and these are also tightened to 25 Newton meters. And then it's time to put the front camshaft seal in place. Put some oil on the seal and then just push it in place. Use a socket to tap it if you need to. And make sure that it clicks in properly. That's a drill bit we've put in to the flywheel to lock that in place and keep the cylinders all in top dead center. We can take that out and put the bolt back in to cover the flywheel housing. Now I just spun the engine around a few times, just to make sure that no valves and no cylinders were hitting each other. And this is just a safety measure to make sure that the timing is set correctly and that you had your cylinders as well as your valves at top dead center for cylinder number 1. I could feel no metal to metal contact, and it just went as supposed to. So I spun it around a lot of revolutions because I just really wanted to make sure that there was nothing wrong with the timing. Well, a major milestone. The new head is installed. We've torqued all the head bolts to the proper spec, and we've put the timing chain back on with the timing chain retentioner bolts and the timing chain tensioner. I've also spun the engine around a few times just to make sure that the timing chain is on correctly and that no valves and pistons meet and kiss, because that will be devastating. So yeah, now it's just time to reinstall everything we've taken off. So I'm going to take you through that, and then we'll do a little service as well. Obviously, because we've drained the coolant system, we're going to be filling that with a brand new coolant, and just make sure that everything is on correctly again. Okay, so as we start to work our way back on what we've taken off, we're going to be reinstalling this vacuum line. It goes to the brake vacuum booster. I've already put a new O-ring on, and then we'll just push it into the head and then thread it in. And these lines usually are 14 millimeters. There we go. And then we'll just reinstall the fuel pipes that go to the fuel pressure regulator, and it's very tricky to show you exactly how and what you're supposed to do. You can watch my other video for the fuel pressure regulator where I show you how to take it off and reinstall it. But yeah, It's the same way as the vacuum line, so I've already replaced the O-ring, and I will just push it in and tighten this, and then I'll show you where to connect those to the fuel cooler. Okay, that's all the fuel pipes done. We'll continue at the fuel cooler because we also took off a few coolant pipes. So we'll reinstall those and just make sure that you know where all the clamps are. There we go. And then there's one up front as well. Now don't forget the clamps. There we go. And we had some wiring as well that comes from a wiring loom over here. And all these wires are supposed to go in between the intake, come out here and go around the front of the engine. So we'll do that. Make sure we don't forget to do that. And one of these is for the injector wiring harness, and then the other one goes around, and that's the engine temp sensor, so the coolant temp sensor. And then behind here we also have a plug for the map sensor, so we can plug that in. And while we're in between here, we'll also plug in all the glow plug connectors again. Now we'll refit the oil dipstick and make sure that there's a oil seal on it. And it should be pushed in tightly so it doesn't come out. Yeah, there we go. It should require some force to pull it out. And then just secure it with this small little bolt. There we go, this one. So now we've reconnected all the fuel lines to the fuel cooler as well as the fuel pressure regulator. But on the fuel pressure regulator there's also a sensor there, so we'll have to plug that in again, and don't forget that. I think it might be, yeah, well, it must be a pressure sensor or something. So now all the fuel system is completely connected, as well as the fuel cooler. So now we can go on, connect all the coolant lines again. And for that we'll put the lift hook back on. Okay, and with the cooling system in place, just double check under the engine that you've done up the drain plug again, because we emptied the cooling system using the drain plug on the bottom before doing this job. We just need to make sure that that's connected again and tight before we try and fill the engine with coolant. Okay, I've now reconnected the coolant sensor wire and hooked it up to the spots that it's supposed to, and the cooling system is in place. Now we can do the turbo and turbo oil feed, and for this we have a brand new gasket. Now the oil feed on the turbo, the banjo fitting, is supposed to get 2 new copper washers. So we have those here, and then we'll install it to the turbo. You put one on with the washer already on the bolt, and then you put one washer underneath. And then you have to get everything located properly. And like everything else, it's supposed to be torqued down to 25 Newton meters. So now that basically everything is hooked back up, we're talking about the coolant system, the fuel system, as well as the oil. Now we can start installing the injectors again. And I have already replaced the injector seals and washers, and I have a really good video about how to take them out and how to reinstall the injectors. But I'm going to show you just quickly here to shorten down this video. And if you get any questions when viewing this, then please go and watch my other video if you want to know anything in detail about the injectors and how to install them. And if you still have questions after that, then just please comment them down below. Okay, so now it's time to actually install the injectors into the new head. And we have the brand new copper washers here, as well as the new oil seals, fuel to oil seals. So we'll push them in. As usual, they go in a specific order, and I've made sure to maintain this order correctly. And then you just click them in, just like that. You have to hear and feel a click. And you might have to rotate the engine because the lobes might be in the way. And now we're going to be fitting the clamps again onto the injectors, and all the bolts are replaced as well. And these clamps should be torqued to 32 Newton meters. And now we can put the rocker shaft back on. And these bolts have also been replaced. And then tightened gradually from the middle out. And then torque down to 32 Newton meters. Okay, and when setting the rocker adjuster screws, you have to get the lobe to the full lift position. So we're going to be spinning the engine to full lift on the first cylinder. Just like that. So now cylinder number 1 is at full lift here. And now we screw the screw. Now we screw the screw all the way down until it bottoms out. There, I can't turn it anymore, and then we'll turn it one complete turn back. So half and 1. And then we can tighten this little nut on top to lock the adjuster screw in place. There we go. And then we just go and do that for all the cylinders. There we go. And after you've adjusted all the rocker adjusting screws, it is important that you spin the engine around 2 times just to make sure that none of the injectors are bottoming out. Well, it feels like there's nothing touching or anything, so I think that's good enough. Now we can refit the injector wiring harness and plug it in. So now we can install the rocker cover and the new rocker cover gasket. Stuff back on. So I still have the intake pipe to put it back on, as well as the boost pipe at the EGR. Other than that, we just have to hook those things up, put the fan back on, and also fill the coolant system. That's basically it. Okay guys, so I think that everything is in order, everything is connected. We've got oil, we've got coolant, we've got diesel, all the plugs are connected back. Yeah, everything is hooked up as it's supposed to, so I guess this is where we started. And we'll just let it prime for a moment. Can't see any diesel leaks. Okay, so I hope this video helped you a lot, and thank you a lot for watching. Now please subscribe check my other videos. For example, if you want to see this video split into 3, where you also get to see how to prepare the new cylinder head. If you, for example, have a cracked head or something and need to replace that, I've got a video on that as well as a lot else. I'm standing in front of my P38, which I'll be replacing the cylinder head on as well. So I'll be filming that, so please subscribe and comment down below if you have any questions. Thanks for watching again.